Thanks very much, Brian, for the invitation to talk about the Australian situation. And I thought I'd introduce my presentation with just a little bit about the Australian cattle industry, and then you'll understand the context of what we do with performance recording. So, tell me which one goes forward here.
The right one. The right one.
The right one?
The right one's the one, I think.
This one here?
Just down now.
This is forward?
That'll go back and that goes forward.
Okay, got it. Okay, so Australia is one of the largest islands in the world, and I've put on this as a graph the Tropic of Capricorn, so you'll understand that north and a little way south of the Tropic of Capricorn you'd have Bos indicus cattle, or tropically adapted cattle, because we have cattle tick problems, and in the southern part of Australia it's a temperate type climate, and so we're running Bos taurus breeds. And as it turns out, the percentage of cattle of our 30 million head is divided evenly between Bos indicus blood cattle and Bos taurus blood cattle. I might say, though, that for the northern parts of Australia, there are fewer and fewer purebred cattle being run of Bos indicus derivation. In other words, they're not large herds of Brahman cattle or Santa Gertrudis cattle. They tend to be composite cattle that include those tropical breeds. Now, of the 30 million head, that's cattle. About 3 million of those, of course, are dairy cattle, but their meat goes into the meat chain, so that's part of the 30 million. I thought you might also like to know where does the output go? So every year Australia exports about 700,000 live cattle, and interestingly to this group, of that 700,000, 115,000 are heifers exported for breeding purposes to Russia, Turkey, China, Indonesia, Kazakhstan being the main markets. It's easy for us to do that because in our export of cattle for value adding and slaughtering, which has been going on for some time, at a level of about 1 million head, it's just reduced recently because the Indonesian government wants to make a move towards more self-sufficiency in its beef industry, and that was a huge export market for us. We have all the infrastructure for quarantining cattle, collecting the feed, running the ships and all that sort of thing. 736,000 tonnes of carcass weight beef goes onto the local market, 35%, and the rest goes onto the export market. So I guess you can understand why we're pretty twitchy about BSE, because if we ever had BSE and lost our export markets, it would be impossible for us to consume our production locally, and the industry would be essentially devastated. This is the distribution of the seed stock herd by tropical breeds, European breeds and British breeds, and in that seed stock herd, British breeds dominate, 53%. The 1, 2 and 3 breed in British breeds is Angus, Hereford and then Shorthorn, and in the European breeds, Charolais, Limousin and Simmental. In the tropical breeds, Brahman, Droughtmaster and Santa Gertrudis. So you may ask why, if 50% of the cattle in Australia commercial cattle have a Bos indicus influence, why are they only represented at the level of 33% in the seed stock herd? And the reason is that in the northern parts of Australia, much of the industry, as I said previously, is crossbred or are composites that include the seed stock industry coming out of the 33%. To give you an idea of some of the extremes in our breeding herd, I'll just give you some excerpts of the annual report from the Australian Agricultural Company, being the largest cattle producer in Australia. They have 23 properties, mainly in northern Australia. They run 5 feedlots as part of their vertically integrated exercise. Their properties cover 7.2 million hectares, which is only a fraction smaller than the total size of Ireland. They run 660,000 head. Their breed distribution is Wagyu 60,000, Angus 65,000. The Angus are being used to develop the Wagyu cross cattle that go into their feedlots, which in turn are exported into the high quality marble Japanese market. And then the rest of their cattle are run in northern Australia and are composites, given 3 proprietary names. I guess Gulf is a regional composite that they run, Barclay is another region, and they're Brahman composites. And those composites typically involve Brahman, a little bit of Charolais, maybe some Angus, and Senepol. So those composites are developed to optimise production under the environment for a particular market. And the AA company has its own genetic evaluation system, which is run through BreedPlan, in order to optimise its selection of what you'd agree is a fairly large herd. So the BreedPlan genetic evaluation system, I think we can reasonably claim it is the world's most widely used genetic evaluation system. Developed in Australia, it's used by 44 breeds, over 100 breed associations, and it's used in 15 countries across the world, in some cases nationally, in some cases with a small market share. It covers growth, carcass and fertility in one multi-breed model, and then does calving ease and some other trays. The pedigree database, I know we had lots of discussion about pedigree databases before lunch. The pedigree database that ABRI is responsible for, or the custodian of, is just over 40 million animals. I'd like you to have a good look at the design of the research model for the BreedPlan system, because I believe that it probably is one of the most effective systems of its type in the world. What we decided to do many years ago was to, from a funding point of view, quarantine research and development from commercialisation. And the rationale for that decision is that researchers are good at research and they should focus on research and not have their work compromised by commercial considerations, and that commercialisers tend to be a bit too impatient to do good research. And so the R&D is funded jointly by the national government, state governments and cattle producers. Australia has a levy of about $5 per head that is transacted. So if I sell an animal to a feedlot, I pay $5, and when the feedlot slaughters the animal, they pay another $5. So that raises quite a lot of money. And that funds a major research activity, national research activity for the red meat industry. The key organisation that does the development of the models for BreedPlan is the Animal Genetics and Breeding Unit, which has a very fine reputation worldwide, and headed up by Dr. Hans Grasser, a German scientist who came to Australia, made a wonderful contribution to the development of BreedPlan, and just 2 weeks ago was given the highest award that Australia gives to a contributor to the Australian cattle seed stock industry, so wonderful achievement. There are about 20 geneticists in that group who spend some of their time on beef genetics and other parts of their time on sheep genetics and pig genetics and genetics of trees. We also have a group called the Beef CRC, which is now in its 21st year, which is part of a politician's dream for a clever country. And it has been putting considerable money through these three sources into meat quality research and genomics. For those that are paying me a great compliment by writing things down, all this is actually on the website right now. The commercialisation model is that the breed plan software is serviced exclusively to ABRI at the University of New England. And ABRI is a company conformed with all the corporate requirements of the Australian Securities Commission, but it is a special class of company that wouldn't be unfamiliar to many of you, particularly in the United States, a not-for-profit company. And so it does business. It does business to provide a viable service to organisations within the livestock industry worldwide. Any profits it makes are invested in future developments. That group has a software team of about 22 people which do the non-genetic things. That's all the software that needs to surround the breed plan model so that it provides a useful commercial tool for breed associations to do their accounting, their web management, their pedigrees, their genetic evaluation, their sale of cattle and so on. So from that system then we simply subcontract out to, I've just listed Brahman, Charolais, Santa Gertrudis and Angus as a sample of the 44 breeds that are contracted with us across many countries. And so essentially the R&D group set its own priorities. We have one representative on the planning committee for the R&D, and likewise the ABRI has a commercially oriented board that looks about running a viable business for its services to its customers worldwide, and the R&D people have one representative on the ABRI board. The trays which BreedPlan produces as EBVs or EPDs, depending on the geography in which we operate, a balanced set of trays across growth, fertility, carcass, and a series of other trays including docility, net feed intake, flight time, which I should explain. In Northern Australia we do have cattle that tend to be a bit flighty in their temperament, and we've developed a test which is the time from opening the bale head until the animal breaks a light beam, and of course the faster they move, the more concerned you are about their temperament. I should say that I gave this talk to the World South Devon Conference, and I explained in great detail what flight time meant. And the vote of thanks, the South Devon breeder who had 5 cows said, he came from Cornwall, I can't understand the flight time. I have to get in the race and push my little darlings out through the bale head. So we don't have that situation. So we've talked about micro-assisted EBVs, and it's the same sort of process that's done in the US. A combination of pedigree, performance, and the genomic predictions are combined to produce micro-assisted EBVs, which are in production for Australian Angus in monthly runs, and as in the US, Australian Angus is leading the charge, but Brahman also are involved in genomic EBVs. Across-country evaluations, they are run across countries that have some commercial reason to be combining data for marketing of their genetics, and who may be in production cycles which allow them to synchronise those evaluations. So Australia and New Zealand has been combining data over virtually the entire seed stock industry for 22 years across the full range of traits. South Africa and Namibia combine their data for evaluation. The Pan American evaluation, which was referred to by the previous speakers, combines data across the US, Canada, Uruguay and Argentina. That's a huge database, over 6 million animals involved in that evaluation. And Murray Grey, which is a minor breed, but the countries in which Murray Grey are represented, Australia, New Zealand, US, Canada and the UK, have been combining all their data for many years. Then around the genetic evaluation system, there are a wide range of decision-making tools that are aimed to assist producers to have high-quality data and to maximise genetic progress. And those tools include breed object, which is a selection index, take stock, which is a benchmarking tool for genetic progress, mate cell, which is a mating selection tool, a series of quality assurance products, gene prob, which is particularly useful for genetic defect conditions, and an internet information system. So breed object is a simple selection tool, weighting EBVs by their economic values. Everybody does it, but it underpins what we do with our benchmarking tools and our mate selection tools. So take stock is a genetic benchmarking tool which benchmarks progress of the herd against the breed and sets up key performance indicators and indicates how well the breed and the herd perform against those indicators. Mate cell is developed by Professor Brian Kinghorn, who's one of the most outstanding animal geneticists in the world, I'd say. He had a previous product called TGRM, which has been used widely for 10 years, and this is his latest product, which assists in optimising genetic progress by defining mating lists. There are a series of quality assurance products under the titles of Data Audit, and which has a completeness of performance recording reports. So our technical people will go to a farm, they will have run a report which shows where they are deficient in their performance recording, and for the marketplace then there's a star rating system which goes from 1 star to 5 stars, which gives the commercial buyer some comfort about the level of performance recording that's being undertaken by the particular bull breeder. Gene prob is again another Kinghorn tool that calculates the probability of an animal being a carrier of a particular genetic condition based on DNA and pedigree. It particularly came to the fore with some of the genetic conditions that Peter Parnell will talk about in his paper tomorrow, because it's run frequently. It uses the entire pedigree database, it uses the latest DNA tests, and it allows monitoring of genetic conditions, be they positive or negative to the breed, and they are reported immediately on the internet to help the whole breeding community. Now, Internet Solutions is simply an internet information system that deals with the marketing of animals, a whole series of inquiries, internet input of data, validation, mating prediction, and so on. So it's used 3 million pages of information a month is its current usage level. And then as I wind up, then of course it's all right having all this information, but unless there's a technical interface with the breeding community, then it may be all for naught. So we have a technical support group which again operates under two banners. The top one with the floppy ears is Tropical Beef Technology Services that service the north of Australia, which have different issues than the south of Australia, and the Southern Beef Technology Services Group. And they undertake on-farm visits, workshops, field days, webinars, newsletters, technical tip sheets, consultation with breed associations, training breed staff, and they provide an industry interface with the research groups because they're in the field and they know what the field requirements are. The countries that are using the breed plan system at a high level, or in some cases at a minor level, are given there, and as you can see, the geography is pretty widespread. So the summary is that the system's used by 100 associations, 44 breeds, 15 countries, 60,000 users. It generates 460,000 beef registrations or pedigree certificates a year. It records more animals a year than that, of course, maybe 600,000 to 700,000. EBVs are produced on 22 trays. Cross-country evaluation has been done for 22 years. The internet window is 3 million pages a month, DNA is included, database 40 million pedigree cattle. The R&D budget, which is a question that you put to our American colleagues, has been running at 12 million to 20 million per annum in the period 2001 to 2011. So this sort of development, particularly in the genomics area, is thirsty on research funds. And I have to say, Brian, I admire your optimism in considering across-country evaluations with a €100,000 budget a year, and I know that there are cooperating parties putting a bit more in than that, but to get a production service that's very time responsive is a huge task, and one should never underestimate the R&D required to do it efficiently. Thank you.